My daughter got back in her luxury SUV and drove away, leaving me standing on the side of a deserted Arizona highway in the middle of nowhere. I was 68 years old. The nearest town was 15 miles away. There was no cell service, and she knew it. But let me back up 3 hours. Because you need to understand how I got here. You need to understand what kind of person leaves their own father to die in the desert. The silence inside Monica's car that morning was expensive. The kind of silence that costs $100,000. Her SUV purred so quietly you could barely hear the engine, and the doors blocked out the desert wind like we were sealed in a vault. I sat in the passenger seat watching red rock formations pass by. These were the same roads I'd driven with my wife Eleanor every year for 20 years. After she died 5 years ago, I kept the tradition alive with Monica. I thought it would honor her mother's memory. I thought it would bring us closer. I was wrong about a lot of things. Monica had her phone on speaker. She always did. Like she assumed everyone around her would be fascinated by her business. But it wasn't her business she was discussing. It was mine. "Kyle, just tell them the portfolio is solid," she said, tapping her manicured nails on the steering wheel. "The power of attorney is ironclad. We just need him to sign off on the last transfer, and we can start the liquidation process Monday." Liquidation. The word hung in that air-conditioned car like a vulture. I kept my eyes on the horizon. I didn't turn my head, but my stomach twisted into a knot. "Is he being difficult?" Kyle's voice crackled through the speakers. Her husband, the man with the expensive shoes and the eyes that never stopped calculating. "He's just slow," Monica sighed. She glanced at me for half a second. "He keeps asking questions, wants to read everything. It's like he doesn't trust me." That's when I spoke. My voice came out calmer than I felt. "What investment is that, Monica?" Her fingers tightened on the wheel. Just a small movement, but I saw it. "It's nothing, Dad, just some portfolio adjustments." "You said liquidation," I replied, "and power of attorney. That sounds like more than an adjustment." Her face changed. The beautiful daughter mask slipped away. What I saw underneath was cold, impatient, cruel. "You don't get it," she snapped. "The market is complicated now. We're being proactive. We're trying to build a future, our future." "Your future?" I asked. "Or my future? Because it sounds like you're cashing out my life's work." That's when the dam broke. "Oh, here we go," she screamed. "It's just money, Dad. It's sitting in boring, low-yield funds collecting dust. Kyle and I have a chance to do something real with it, but you're too old and too scared to take a risk." "It's not about risk, Monica. It's about respect." "Respect?" She laughed. It was an ugly sound. "You wouldn't understand the documents anyway. You'd just slow." "Everything down like you always do. You're holding me back." Holding her back. I had given this woman everything. I had stayed up with her when she was sick. I had cheered at every graduation. I had paid for the education that gave her the vocabulary to sell off my future. And now I was just an obstacle. With a violent jerk, Monica swerved the SUV onto the shoulder. Gravel sprayed, red dust billowed, the tires screeched. We stopped in the middle of nowhere, miles from anything, just desert and sky and silence. "If you can't trust me," she said, her voice shaking with rage, "then maybe you need some time alone to think about it." She got out, slammed her door, walked around to my side and wrenched it open. "Get out." I stared at her. "What? Get out?" She reached into the back seat and grabbed my suitcase, the old leather one I'd had for 30 years. She threw it onto the ground. Then she took the bottle of water from beside my seat, tossed it into the dust. "When you're ready to stop being an obstacle and start being a supportive father, you can call me." She knew there was no cell service. The words were a knife. I got out of the car. My legs felt unsteady. This couldn't be happening. This was my daughter. My Jessica. No, Monica. The little girl who painted me a coffee cup in art class. The one who used to hold my hand. But the woman standing in front of me was a stranger. Her eyes were cold, hard, empty. She got back in the driver's seat, slammed the door, hit the gas. The SUV shot back onto the highway, spitting gravel from the tires. I stood there, 68 years old, alone on the side of a deserted road, and watched my only child drive away. If you believe parents deserve respect, not abandonment, hit that subscribe button right now. Only selfish manipulators like Monica would scroll past. Let's stand together against greed disguised as family. The dust settled slowly. It coated my shoes, my clothes, my skin. The silence that rushed in was absolute. No wind, no cars, nothing but the faint hum of heat rising from the asphalt. The SUV became a speck on the horizon. Then it was gone. I looked down at my suitcase, then at the bottle of water sitting in the red dirt. My first thought was fear. Pure, cold fear. I was miles from the nearest town. The sun was relentless. A man my age couldn't last long out here. But then something else happened. A strange calm washed over me. The anger and hurt were still there. But underneath them was something crystal clear. For years, I had been living in fog, making excuses for Monica's selfishness, for Kyle's greed. I told myself she was just ambitious, that she loved me in her own way. But the dust from her tires had wiped all that away. She hadn't just left me on the side of a road. She had shown me exactly who she was. I wasn't a father to her. I was a resource, an account to be drained, an obstacle to be removed. I looked up at the vast, empty sky. I thought of Eleanor. I thought of the life we built together, the values we shared, hard work, integrity, leaving things better than you found them. Monica had abandoned all of it. She had abandoned me. The shock was fading, being replaced by something harder, colder, resolve. I wasn't going to die out here, and I wasn't going to call her begging for forgiveness. The man she left in the dust was gone. The man standing here now was someone different, someone who finally saw the truth. I unscrewed the cap on the water bottle, took a long, slow drink. It was warm, but it felt like the clearest, purest thing I'd ever tasted. I put the cap back on, picked up my suitcase, turned to face the long road ahead, and started to walk. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing for certain. I was no longer walking in her shadow. I was walking toward myself. Comment: dignity over dollars. If you can't stand people who treat their family like ATM machines, show Monica and people like her that integrity still matters. The asphalt was hot enough to cook on. Every step I took on that shoulder was an act of will. The sun beat down on my head. My dress shoes crunched on gravel. I didn't look back. There was nothing behind me but a ghost and a cloud of dust. I just kept walking. After about an hour, I heard a deep rumble behind me. An 18-wheeler. It slowed down, air brakes hissing, pulled over about 50 feet ahead of me. The passenger door swung open. The driver was a large man with a graying beard and kind eyes under a worn baseball cap. "You look like you're in a bit of a fix, friend," he called out. "Everything all right?" I walked up to the cab, shielded my eyes from the sun. "Having some car trouble a few miles back," I said. The lie came easily. It wasn't shame. It was privacy. The full story was mine. "My phone's not getting a signal," he nodded. "Happens all the time out here. The desert doesn't care much for technology. Name's Frank. Where you headed?" "Just to the next town," I replied. "Whatever's closest. I need to get to a bus station." "Well, hop in," Frank said. "I can get you to Kingman. Better than standing out here talking to the lizards." I climbed into the cab. The air inside was cool, smelled faintly of coffee and diesel. It was the smell of work, of a world that ran on schedules and real goods. It was comforting. "Appreciate this more than you know, Frank." "Don't mention it," he grunted, shifting the massive gears. "Can't leave a man stranded. Bad karma." We didn't talk much after that. Frank seemed to understand I wasn't in the mood. He turned on a classic rock station. The sound of guitars filled the space between us. I watched the landscape slide by. From up here in the cab, the desert looked different, less menacing, more beautiful. It was all a matter of perspective. Frank dropped me at a dusty bus station on the edge of town. I thanked him, offered him money. He waved it away. "Pay it forward sometime," he said. Then he was gone. Inside the station, the air was thick with the smell of disinfectant. A tired-looking woman sat behind plexiglass. I walked up to the counter. "One ticket to the city," I said. "One way." The words felt significant. One way? There was no going back. She printed the ticket and slid it under the glass. I paid in cash. The bus ride was long. I got a window seat, watched Arizona bleed into Nevada and then into familiar landscapes. My phone stayed in my pocket. Turned off. I felt no urge to turn it on, No curiosity about whether Monica had tried to call, no desire to hear her voice. Her voice was noise from a life that was no longer mine. My mind should have been a storm of anger and betrayal. But instead, it was preternaturally calm, sharp. As a planner, my job had been to look at complex systems, empty lots, decaying neighborhoods, and see new order. I would draw blueprints, create frameworks, build structures. That's what I was doing now. My life had become a mismanaged development project. The foundation, the one Eleanor and I laid, was strong, built on love and mutual respect, but the structure on top of it had become rotten. Monica and Kyle weren't building. They were demolishing, piece by piece, for scrap. They thought I was the old historic building waiting to be condemned. They miscalculated. They forgot I was the one who drew the original plans. I knew where every support beam was. I knew the zoning laws, and I knew that sometimes, to save a foundation, you have to tear down everything built on top of it. The bus slowed as we entered the city limits. The setting sun glinted off familiar towers, glass and concrete canyons, my old workspace. I knew this city's bones. As the bus pulled into the terminal, I could feel it. The plan was forming, clear, logical, a blueprint, but it wouldn't start today. It would start in exactly 1 week, because some foundations need time to settle before you can build on them. The taxi dropped me at the end of the driveway. I paid the driver. As he pulled away, I stood for a moment, just looking. My house wasn't a mansion, not like the glass and steel structures Monica favored. It was a 2-story brick colonial, solid, unassuming, nestled among oak trees that Eleanor and I planted when we were young. This was the house where we raised our daughter. Every brick was mortared with a memory. It was home. The key felt cool in my hand, familiar. It slid into the lock with a well-worn click. The door swung open. Inside, the silence was different from the manufactured quiet of Monica's car. This was the deep layered silence of a life. The air smelled of old books and the faint scent of lemon polish Eleanor always used. I set my suitcase down by the door. It looked out of place, covered in red dust from my betrayal. I walked through the living room. My footsteps echoed on hardwood. Sunlight streamed through windows, illuminating dust motes in the air. Everything was exactly as I left it. The worn leather armchair where I read the paper, the stack of books on the side table, the Afghan Eleanor knitted draped over the sofa. This house wasn't a showpiece. It was a testament, a record of a shared life, a quiet legacy of love and partnership. It was everything Monica had decided was worthless. My eyes found the mantelpiece above the fireplace. It was lined with photographs, a timeline of our family. There was Monica on her first day of school, gap-toothed smile, backpack almost as big as she was. There was our wedding photo, me in a rented tuxedo, Eleanor radiant beside me. And there was the one I always came back to, the last photo we took together. I picked it up. It was from our final trip to Arizona, 5 years ago. We were standing at an overlook, Red Rock Canyon stretching behind us. I had my arm around her. She was leaning into me, her face turned toward the sun, a genuine, peaceful smile on her lips. She loved that place. She said the silence there wasn't empty. It was full of answers. Looking at her smile, I finally understood the depth of Monica's transgression. She hadn't just abandoned me on a highway. She had desecrated a memory. She had taken something sacred, a tradition meant to honor her mother, and twisted it into a tool for her own greed. The penthouse, the cars, the endless river of money I'd supplied since Eleanor's passing. I had done it all wrong. I thought I was giving Monica a cushion to soften the blow of losing her mother. Instead, I'd built her a throne, and from that throne, she had judged my life, my legacy, and me, and found us all wanting. A wave of sadness washed over me, but it brought no tears. This was a cold, hard sorrow for the daughter I thought I had, and the stranger she'd become. The betrayal wasn't just against me. It was against Eleanor, against the woman in this photograph, the woman who believed in kindness, integrity, and the simple grace of a life well lived. I placed the photograph carefully back on the mantel. My fingers lingered on the cool glass. I could almost hear Eleanor's voice, practical and calm as always. "Well, Richard," she would say, "what are you going to do about it?" I walked into the kitchen. filled the kettle with water, set it on the stove, opened the cupboard and took down my favorite mug, the one Monica painted for me when she was 10, lopsided, the glaze uneven. But it was real. I took a tea bag from the canister. As I waited for the water to boil, I looked out the window at the old oak tree in the backyard. I had a choice. I could let the rot that had taken hold of Monica's heart spread to mine. I could let bitterness and rage be the final chapter. Or I could do what a planner does, assess the structural damage, condemn the parts beyond saving, reinforce the foundation. The kettle whistled. I poured steaming water over the tea bag, watched the color bleed into the mug, a slow infusion of warmth and strength. This was my house. This was my life. This was Eleanor's legacy, and I would not let it be liquidated. I carried the mug to my armchair, sat down. The silence no longer felt empty. It felt like a war room, the quiet before the first move in a game my daughter didn't even know we were playing. But I wouldn't make that move today, or tomorrow. I would wait, because Monica needed to feel something she'd never felt before. Uncertainty, fear, the slow, creeping realization that she had made a terrible mistake. I took a sip of tea. It was hot and strong, and I had all the time in the world. Day 1. My phone started ringing at 9 a.m. I was sitting in my kitchen, toast and jam on a plate, the morning paper spread out in front of me. The phone buzzed on the table. Monica's name lit up the screen. I watched it vibrate, watched the call go to voicemail. Then I took a bite of toast and turned the page. The calls came in waves that first day, every hour, then every 30 minutes. I didn't answer. I didn't even look at the messages. I just counted them in my head. By evening, there were 12 missed calls. I made myself dinner, chicken and vegetables, set the table for one, ate slowly. The phone buzzed twice more during dinner. I ignored it. Day 2. The texts started. "Dad, where are you? We need to talk. This is childish." I read none of them, just saw the notifications stack up, 14 messages by noon. I spent the day in my study, going through old documents, papers Monica had asked me to sign over the past year. I read every word this time. Power of attorney, investment transfers, authorizations. My stomach turned as I realized how close I'd come, how much I'd trusted, how foolish I'd been. The phone rang 11 more times. Day 3. I made tea in Monica's old mug, the lopsided one she'd painted with such care. I wondered when she'd stopped caring, when the little girl who made this cup became the woman who left me in the desert. I sat by the window, watched birds in the oak tree. The phone buzzed constantly now. The messages were getting angrier. "Dad, this is ridiculous. You're being dramatic. Just answer the phone." I counted 22 calls that day. That afternoon, I saw movement outside. A car pulled up, Monica's SUV. I watched from behind the curtain. She got out, walked to the door, rang the bell. I didn't move. She knocked, then pounded. "Dad, I know you're in there. Open the door." Her voice carried through the wood. I sat in my chair, silent as stone. After 10 minutes, she left. I watched her drive away, watched the dust settle. Day 4. A neighbor stopped me in the yard. "Richard, everything okay? I saw your daughter here yesterday. She seemed upset." I smiled. "Just a misunderstanding. I'm fine. Just thinking through some things." "Well, if you need anything." "I appreciate that, really." The phone had 43 missed calls now. The voicemails were piling up. I didn't listen to a single one. But I could imagine Monica's voice, the progression from annoyed to angry to worried to desperate. Good. Day 5. I spent the morning organizing Eleanor's photos, creating a small memorial box, found letters she'd written, cards from birthdays past. In one letter from our 20th anniversary, she'd written, "The measure of a life isn't what we accumulate, Richard. It's what we give away to those who truly need it." I read that line 3 times. She would know what to do with the penthouse. The phone was quieter today, only 8 calls. Maybe Monica was finally understanding. Day 6. I walked through the house, room by room, remembering. The kitchen where Eleanor taught Monica to bake. The living room where we opened Christmas presents. The bedroom where we held each other through grief and joy. Every room was a chapter. And Monica wanted to liquidate it all, turn it into another line item, another asset to leverage. The phone rang 14 times. One message got through somehow. I saw the preview on the lock screen. "Dad, please, I'm scared something happened to you. Just let me know you're okay." Fear. Finally. But I still didn't respond. Hit that like button if you believe setting boundaries isn't cruelty, it's self-respect. Only entitled people like Monica think they deserve everything without earning it. Day 7. I woke up early, watched the sunrise through the bedroom window, looked at Eleanor's photograph on the nightstand. "Well, Eleanor," I said aloud, "what am I going to do about it?" The answer was crystal clear. I had spent 6 days thinking, planning, preparing. Now it was time to act. I picked up my phone, but I didn't call my daughter. I scrolled through my contacts, found the name I was looking for, Henry Walsh, not just my lawyer, a landmark in the topography of my life. We'd known each other for nearly 50 years, since we were young men trying to make our mark on the world. He reviewed the mortgage on this very house, held my hand, literally, in the hospital waiting room the night Monica was born. He and his wife had been our closest friends. Eleanor adored him. "Henry sees the world in black and white," she used to say fondly. "It's a comfort to know where the lines are." After Eleanor passed, Henry helped me set up the initial trust, the one designed to provide for Monica while protecting my assets. He'd been cautious even then. "It's a lot of leeway, Richard," he'd warned. "Are you sure?" I had waved his concerns away. "She's my daughter, Henry. She'll do the right thing." How hollow those words sounded now. I pressed the call button. It rang twice. Then his voice came on the line. Familiar, steady as a rock. "Richard," he said. There was warmth there, the easy comfort of old friendship. "Good to hear from you. Everything okay?" I looked across the room at Eleanor's portrait on the mantel, kept my voice perfectly level. "Henry, I need to see you." The warmth in his voice receded, replaced by focused attention. He knew my tone. This wasn't a social call. "Of course. What's on your mind? Tomorrow morning?" "We have a lot to do," I said. My words were measured, precise. "I want to review everything. The trust Eleanor and I set up, the power of attorney I signed last year, and especially, I want to discuss the title and ownership of the penthouse downtown." There was a short pause. It wasn't confusion. It was understanding. Henry was connecting the dots. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't need the story. The story was written in the words I'd chosen. Review meant revoke. Discuss meant reclaim. He knew that for me to make this call, a line had been crossed that could never be uncrossed. "I'll clear my schedule," he said finally. His voice all business now, the voice Eleanor had called a comfort. "My first meeting is at 9, but I'll move it. Be at my office at 8 a.m. We'll get it done." "Thank you, Henry." "Don't thank me, Richard," he replied. I could hear the grim resolve in his voice. "Just be ready." We said our goodbyes. I ended the call, placed the phone face down on the table. The first step was taken, the first move made in a game I never wanted to play. On the 7th day, I picked up the phone again, but this time I called a locksmith. The locksmith arrived at 2 p.m. Young man in a blue work shirt, quiet, professional, toolbox that looked like it contained every possible solution to a problem of access. He didn't ask why I needed the locks changed. He simply got to work. I made him a cup of coffee, then sat in my armchair, not to relax, to bear witness. The first sound was metallic scraping, his screwdriver against the old brass lock set on the front door. It was a sound of careful deconstruction, a connection being methodically undone. For years, Monica had a key to that lock. She could come and go as she pleased, a privilege she'd long ago started treating as a right. With every turn of the screwdriver, I felt that unearned right being rescinded. Then came the high-pitched whine of the power drill, cleaning the borehole in the heavy oak door. It was an invasive sound, the noise of alteration, something being changed in a way that couldn't be easily reversed. It was necessary pain, shoring up a defense, carving out weakness to make the structure stronger. I listened as he unwrapped the new hardware, the crisp crackle of plastic packaging, the sound of something new, something untouched by the past. The new lock was heavy, shone with the promise of security. He fitted it into place, his movements economical, precise. Then came the sound I'd been waiting for. He slid the new deadbolt into its housing for the first time. It wasn't a click. It was a solid, authoritative thud. The sound of a heavy bar of steel seating into a reinforced frame, the sound of a boundary being declared, the sound of a gate closing. He handed me a small ring with 3 freshly cut keys. They felt sharp and substantial in my palm, keys to my own life. And for the first time, I was the sole keeper. After he left, I closed the front door. The latch caught with a sharp, clean click, deeper and more final than the old one. Stood there, just listening to the renewed silence of my home. It was the same house, the same room, but it was no longer a place of vulnerable trust. It was a fortress, and I was finally in command. My phone buzzed, Monica's 47th call. I turned it off completely. The silence was absolute. Perfect. Tomorrow morning, Henry and I would make it permanent. Tonight, I would sleep soundly for the first time in years, because the doors were locked and the walls were strong, and no one was getting in without my permission. Have you ever had to close a door on someone you love to protect yourself? Henry Walsh's office was on the 32nd floor. From his window, you could see the entire city, the architectural spine of the metropolis, glass and steel and concrete I'd spent my career helping to shape. But his office felt like it belonged to another time. Dark wood shelves crammed with thick leather-bound law books, the smell of history and precedent. His desk was a vast expanse of mahogany, orderly, imposing, a room built for facts, a place where sentimentality came to be translated into the cold, hard language of the law. Henry sat behind the desk, hands steepled in front of him, face a mask of controlled neutrality. But I knew him too well. I could see the storm gathering in his eyes. I told him everything. Started with the tense silence in the car, ended with the sound of my own footsteps on the lonely gravel shoulder. I recounted it with detached precision, like reading a surveyor's report, listed the facts, the words spoken, the actions taken. I didn't speak of my own pain or fear. I didn't have to. Henry felt it for me. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment. He didn't offer condolences or express shock. He simply picked up a heavy fountain pen from his desk, rolled it between his thumb and forefinger. I could see the muscle in his jaw clenching and unclenching, the only outward sign of the fury building inside him. This wasn't just a client's story to him. This was an offense against a friend, against the memory of Eleanor, against basic decency. Finally he spoke, his voice low and tight. She left you for dead, for all she knew, over money, over her own impatience. He shook his head, not in disbelief, in disgust. All right, Richard, emotion is off the table now. This is a matter of structure. Let's look at the blueprints. He turned to a thick file folder on his desk with my name on it. The quiet, thoughtful friend disappeared, replaced by the sharp, methodical lawyer Eleanor had always trusted. He spread documents across the polished surface like a surgeon laying out instruments, the deed to the penthouse, articles of my primary investment trust, the power of attorney agreement I'd so foolishly signed. Here's the good news, Henry said, his finger tapping on the deed. And it's very good news. You are the sole unencumbered owner of that penthouse. Your name is on the deed, period. He slid the power of attorney document next to it. This, he said with contempt, is what Monica and Kyle have been operating under. They've been treating it like a blank check, like it gave them ownership. But it doesn't. It gives them managerial access contingent on acting in your best interest. It's a leash, Richard, not a title. And by abandoning you, by conspiring to liquidate your assets against your will, she has violated her fiduciary duty so profoundly that she has effectively handed us the knife to cut that leash for good. A weight I hadn't realized I was carrying began to lift. We can take it all back, Henry said, his eyes glinting with cold fire. Every dime, every square foot, and we can do it quietly, quickly, and legally. He leaned forward. Focus absolute. Here is what we're going to do, effective immediately. He took a fresh legal pad, began to write. First, we draft a revocation of power of attorney. I'll have a courier deliver it to her husband's office by noon. From that moment on, her authority over your financial affairs ceases to exist. She will be locked out of every account. His pen scratched against paper. Second, the penthouse. We're not just taking it back. We're protecting it forever. We will create a new, irrevocable trust, a legal fortress. Once the property is in the trust, it cannot be touched by her, by Kyle, or by any creditors they might have. It will be completely secure. He paused, looked up at me. I suggest we name it the Eleanor Hayes Memorial Trust. I nodded, unable to speak for a moment. He understood without me saying a word. This wasn't about revenge. This was about restoring a legacy. Third, he continued, voice relentless, the money, any secondary credit cards or bank accounts you've given her access to, we freeze them. We call the banks this morning, change all the security protocols, the river of cash funding her lifestyle will turn to desert sand. He slid another document toward me. And I've been reviewing the account activity you authorized me to examine last night. He opened a thin spiral-bound report. This is a summary of expenditures from your secondary accounts over the last 18 months, the ones where Monica was a signatory. His finger traced down the page. $15,000 for a week at a Balinese resort, $8,000 for a designer watch for Kyle, $22,000 for a country club membership, and a recurring monthly payment of $6,000 listed only as lifestyle consulting. Were you aware you had hired a lifestyle consultant, Richard? My hands clenched. No, I didn't think so. He closed the report. Finally, we do this the right way. No angry phone calls, no dramatic confrontations from you. My firm will send a formal registered letter outlining every action we've taken and the legal grounds for doing so. It will inform them that any further attempts to access your assets will be met with immediate legal action. It will be cold, professional, and absolute. He pushed the revocation form toward me. This is where it begins, Richard, with your signature. I picked up the heavy fountain pen he offered me. For years, my signature had been an act of generosity, an act of trust. Now, it was an act of preservation. I looked at the line at the bottom of the page. Just a space waiting for a name. My name. I brought the nib down to the paper. The scratch of pen on parchment was the only sound in the room. It was the sound of a door being locked, the sound of a foundation being reclaimed. I signed Richard Hayes, placed a single deliberate period at the end, a full stop. Henry took the document, a notary stepped forward, affixed her seal. The sound of the embosser pressing into paper was a satisfying final thud. By noon, Henry said, every lock, literal and legal, will be changed. And they were. I wasn't there when Monica's credit card was declined, but I could picture it. She would have been in one of those downtown boutiques where price tags are hidden and the air smells of expensive leather, probably holding a handbag, alligator skin and gold hardware. She would have handed her card to the sales associate with easy confidence, the beep, the frown. I'm sorry, madam. It seems to have been declined. Monica's first reaction wouldn't be embarrassment, it would be indignation. That's impossible. That's my father's primary account. Run it again. Another beep. Another apologetic smile. Monica would snatch the card back, produce a different one. Use this one. Beep. The silence that followed would be heavy. She would turn away, fumble for her phone, call Kyle, voice panicked. What is going on? Both cards were declined. His excuses wouldn't make sense. Then her phone would buzz. A text message from me. The first communication in a week. She would open it expecting a plea, an angry tirade, but the message was only 3 words. I'm home. Safe. That's it. No emotion, no explanation, just a simple factual statement. She would stare at those words. The blood would drain from her face. This wasn't a glitch. This was a consequence. My silence was louder than any argument. I imagined she drove straight to the penthouse, exhausted, spoiling for a fight, armed with righteous indignation, ready to confront the father who dared to inconvenience her. She approached the polished door. The key slid into the lock. She turned her wrist. But the mechanism didn't give. The key stopped, hit a solid obstruction, confusion. She pulled it out, examined it, tried again. It wouldn't turn. The confusion curdled into annoyance. She pressed the doorbell, once, twice. A series of short, impatient bursts. Dad, I know you're in there. This isn't funny. Open the door. Only silence answered, deep, indifferent. The annoyance escalated into rage. She abandoned the bell, used her fist, knocking, then banging. The sound loud and ugly in the hushed hallway, her perfect composure cracking. "Dad, open this door right now," she screamed, a queen pounding on gates that no longer recognized her authority. The door would not yield. It was no longer just a door, it was a statement. Finally, exhausted, she would stop, lean her forehead against the cool wood. That's when she would see it. A single sheet of paper, folded neatly in thirds, affixed to the door at eye level with precise tape. It was official. With trembling hands, she would pull it from the door. Heavy, watermarked paper, letterhead at the top. From the law offices of Henry Walsh. Her breath would catch. She would unfold it. Her eyes would struggle with the dense legal language, words leaping out, notice of title transfer, revocation of all permissive use and occupancy rights, effective immediately. Then her eyes would fall on the central clause. The new legal owner of the property, printed in clear, bold, inescapable font, the Eleanor Hayes Memorial Trust. She would read it once, twice, the paper trembling in her hands. This wasn't punishment. This was an eraser. She hadn't just been locked out of property. She'd been written out of a legacy. In her place was the memory of the mother she'd failed to honor. 2 weeks later, Henry's office summoned Monica and Kyle to a formal meeting. They arrived precisely on time, attempting to project offended authority. Kyle's jaw set, cheap imitation of a powerful man, Monica's face a carefully constructed mask of wounded innocence. But I could see the fear in their eyes, the frantic uncertainty my silence had instilled. They sat opposite us, the vast glass table like a chasm between two worlds. Before Kyle could speak, Henry placed his hands flat on the table, his presence calm, absolute, in complete control. "Thank you for coming," he said, voice neutral. "This meeting is not a negotiation, it is a notification." He slid a document across the table. "First, this is a legally executed revocation of power of attorney. Your authority to act on Mr. Hayes' behalf in any financial capacity has been terminated." Kyle snatched the paper, eyes scanning with feigned expertise. Monica just stared at me, waiting for me to wink. Tell her it was all a joke. Henry continued, voice steady as a metronome. He slid a thicker document across. "Second, the property at 1400 City View Plaza has been transferred into an irrevocable trust." Kyle's head shot up. "You can't do that. We have a vested interest." Henry didn't blink. He reached to a separate file, turned it around for Kyle to see. "If you'll direct your attention to Article 4, subsection C of the document you yourself advised Mr. Hayes to sign, you will note that all powers granted are contingent upon acting in the grantor's best interest. Abandoning a 68-year-old man on a remote highway without access to food, water, or communication would be considered by any court a profound violation of that fiduciary duty. You have no vested interest. You have only a record of gross negligence." Kyle's face went pale. "And on the subject of your management," Henry said, voice taking a colder edge. He slid the spiral-bound report across. "This is a summary of expenditures. It includes $15,000 for a Balinese resort, $8,000 for a designer watch, $22,000 for a country club membership, and $6,000 monthly for lifestyle consulting." My client was unaware he had hired a lifestyle consultant. The color drained from Monica's face. The numbers were a stark indictment of her greed. Her carefully constructed mask shattered. She turned tear-filled eyes to me, voice breaking. "Dad," she whispered, "how could you do this? After everything, how could you do this to me? I'm your daughter." I had been silent the entire meeting, a spectator at my own life's restructuring. Now, for the first time, I met her gaze. Her tears did not move me. They were just another currency she was used to spending. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't list her betrayals. I simply reached into my jacket pocket, took out a small, old photograph. Corners softened with time, slid it across the glass table. It glided over the polished surface, came to a stop in front of her. It was a picture of Eleanor, standing on the side of a dusty road, squinting happily into the Arizona sun, red rock formations stretching behind her, the very same stretch of road where Monica had left me. Monica stared at the photograph. Her manufactured tears stopped. The color drained from her face, leaving a sickly, waxy pallor. The image was a ghost, a witness to a crime she thought had been committed in secret. I leaned forward, just slightly. My voice, when I spoke, was not angry, not sad, a simple statement of fact, as cold and clear as the glass between us. "Your mother," I said, "would never have done this." I let the words hang in the silent room. Monica couldn't look away from the photo, couldn't look at me. "And her legacy," I added, voice dropping to a near whisper, "will not be exploited." I pushed my chair back, stood up. Henry stood with me. The meeting was over. There was nothing else to say. The truth was there on the table, captured in a faded photograph, more powerful than any legal document, more final than any locked door. If you're on Richard's side and believe legacy should honor the deserving, not reward betrayal, smash that subscribe button. People who exploit their parents for money, they can keep scrolling. After the meeting, there were no more confrontations, no angry calls, no desperate texts, only profound, widening silence. The story of their new reality came in fragments. A distant cousin mentioned they'd left their temporary apartment. I pictured them loading boxes into a rented truck, designer clothes jarring against the backdrop of a drab suburban complex. Weeks later, Henry mentioned the leasing company for their luxury SUV had been in touch. Eventually, it was repossessed, not from a pristine garage, but from a street-side parking spot in a neighborhood they never would have visited before. The gleaming monument, to their status, hoisted onto a flatbed tow truck. The vehicle, like their lifestyle, had been a rental, and the payment was overdue. Out of quiet curiosity one afternoon, I looked at Monica's social media page, a digital ghost town. The last post from a month ago showed her laughing on a yacht, champagne in hand. Caption, "Living my best life." After that, nothing. The daily updates on expensive meals and luxury purchases had ceased. Her curated world, once a vibrant stream of manufactured perfection, was now a stagnant pond. Her influence, her very identity, had been built on my money. When the money disappeared, so did she. I felt no joy in these images, only deep, abiding sadness. They weren't just facing financial hardship, they were facing reality for the first time, learning in the harshest way possible that a life is not what you can buy, but what you can build. A few months passed. I stood in the penthouse again. First time since the locks were changed. It was empty now. All of Monica's designer furniture, her expensive art, her curated luxury, sold off to pay debts I was no longer funding. The rooms were vast and silent, filled only with pale afternoon light through floor-to-ceiling windows. I wasn't alone. With me were two women from Haven House, the shelter Eleanor gave so much of her time to. They looked around, faces a mixture of awe and disbelief. I held out a set of keys on a simple silver ring. "It's yours," I said to the director, a kind woman with tired, hopeful eyes. A safe place, a new start. That's what Eleanor would have wanted. She took the keys, her fingers closing around them. "Mr. Hayes," she said, voice thick with emotion, "this is more than a new start. For the women we serve, this is a new world." After they left, I walked through the empty rooms one last time. For years, I built a kingdom for my daughter, thinking that was love. But love isn't about building walls around someone. Love is about giving them a foundation to build for themselves. I was left on a desolate road, but it was there that I found my way back. My legacy isn't in skyscrapers or numbers in an account. It's in the memory of a woman named Eleanor, and in the second chances we can now give to those who truly need it. As for those 55 missed calls, I never needed to answer. My silence was the clearest answer of all. I stepped out onto the balcony. The city stretched before me, a vast, intricate map of 1,000,000 different lives. The air was cool and clean this high up, the roar of traffic below just a distant rhythmic hum. For years, this view represented the peak of Monica's ambition. But now, I saw something different. I saw a community, a world full of people just trying to find their way. A sense of peace settled over me, deeper and more profound than any I'd felt in years. Not the silence of an empty home, but the quiet of a life that has finally been put in right order. The accounts were balanced, the foundation was secure. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt truly at home. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? If you believe family should be built on love, not liquidation, subscribe to this channel. Only greedy, ungrateful people like Monica and Kyle won't. Comment "Protect your legacy" if you stand with Richard, and hit that like button if you can't stand children who see their parents as nothing more than dollar signs. Let's build a community that values integrity over inheritance.